Hey vinyl lovers, welcome back up into the vinyl attic for another episode of Vinyl Fetish where we were counting through, not down or up, 100 great albums that should be in your record collection if you care about albums and records and vinyl as much as I do. And today we're going to be talking about an album that Time magazine in 1999 called the greatest album of the 20th century, which is a pretty big accolade for a piece of plastic. And the reason we're talking about this, there's a movie out right now about Bob Marley called One Love, and it has the cooperation of the Marley family. And so Bob is in the news today, and I wanted to make sure that we took a trip to the Caribbean on this count through. And so we are going to talk about an album that is meaningful on multiple levels. Bob Marley and the Wailers, Exodus, 1977, June 1977. We're back again in 1977. We're going to have to talk about 1977 and why 1977 is such an important year in music. But this is an album that has a lot of significance. In fact, when it came out, it was described as not being very reggae, believe it or not, compared to things that the Wailers had put out in the past, that the sort of music that was popular in Jamaica at the time. This was recorded after some of the main folks from the Wailers, like Peter Tosh and Bunny Wailer, had left the band. But there's a really interesting story behind this record, and I want to talk about what it means now in the 2020s. Like a lot of people, like a lot of white kids in the suburbs, I guess my journey into Bob Marley was through Eric Clapton, when the song I Shot the Sheriff came on the radio and was such a huge hit in the mid-70s. And somebody said, that is from somebody else, and that beat is from somebody else. And I started learning more about reggae music in the rock magazines. One of the things that was really cool was to see the English punk rock scene very into reggae music. Johnny Rotten with a Bob Marley t-shirt. So, it piqued my interest as a kid who wanted to know about kind of the music that was outside the margins of what was on the radio in the late 70s, mainly disco. And I started the journey into knowing and loving Bob Marley. I was working in a record store in, I think it was in May of 1981, when Bob Marley died of cancer, and it was sort of a shock. He was still putting out records and going strong and gaining a wider and wider global audience, and then all of a sudden he was gone. But there was this more dramatic story behind Marley that a lot of us didn't know. A lot of us that were just sort of digging the records that didn't really know. And the significance of Marley within Jamaica, when Jamaica gets its independence in 1964 and ska music emerges, and young Marley is sort of one of the early pioneers of ska music as it infuses with Rastafarianism in the late 60s and becomes what we now know as reggae music, and becomes more political, more religious, more spiritual, more Afrocentric, and Jamaica as a nation is caught in the grips of how to break free of colonialism. It was a British colony, and then in 1964 it breaks free, but there's a lot of political turmoil. And Bob Marley, thanks to sort of the discovery of his music outside that small island, was gaining a lot of political power. He was sort of the voice that the outside world saw of Jamaica, and so there was a sort of grab for Marley's endorsement. And so when we're in the mid-70s, there is a kind of contest between the party on the left and the party on the right to claim Marley as their own. He kind of gets pulled up into that, and one of the things that happens in the middle of all that is in 1976, he's the target of an assassination attempt. It's sort of an amazing story. In fact, he was grazed by one of the bullets, supposedly because he turned his body sideways and the bullet whizzed by him and grazed his chest and lodged into his arm. His wife Rita was also shot. But because of that incredible tension and not feeling safe in Kingston, Jamaica, there's a time of incredible amounts of violence, political violence and gang violence, Bob Marley left Jamaica. He went on an exodus. He decided he would be safer. And he's got these kids and he's got this wife that's been a target, that he's going to take his music and head to England and head to the world to essentially tour the world as an expatriate, as someone who is looking for safety, but also bringing the music of Jamaica, the spiritual message of Rastafarianism, and the political political energy around the decolonial movement that was raging across the Caribbean and Africa in the 1960s and 70s to a much wider audience. So this album happens kind of in a time of struggles. And, the album before this is Rastaman Vibration. And this is an album where he really starts taking a much more political, global political position. Has the incredible anthem War on it, a war, that is just a song of uprising. It's the song that says, until there are no more first-class and second-class citizens on any nation, I say war. Which is interesting. I think about, how the people in Gaza today might see that song as an anthem, for example. These songs became ignition for a lot of the anti-colonial movement in Angola and Mozambique that are name-checked in that song, in South Africa, especially in Zimbabwe. When Zimbabwe got its independence in 1980, Bob Marley was invited to sing and did to the newly freed nation that had been the colonial empire of Rhodesia. And there is this thing that is happening where his music is becoming the anthem or the encouragement of all these anti-colonial movements around the world, including in the Caribbean and including in Africa, especially across Africa. The summer of 1983, I was a 19-year-old kid living in a squat in Brixton, which, if you know about Brixton is a ghetto of London, on the south side of London, on the very end of the Victoria line. And I was living in a squat with some Irish folks, some French folks. The water would come on once a week, and we had this incredible life. But we were surrounded by members of the British Empire from the diaspora of African and Caribbean nations who had come to live in Brixton. And we were surrounded by reggae music all the time. I just remember reggae playing all the time. Not just Bob Marley, but Bob Marley at that point, this is 1983, 2 years after his death, had become a symbol of global anti-colonialism and anti-racism and was defiant. You knew where somebody stood politically if they were wearing a Bob Marley t-shirt, or they had Bob Marley and the Wailers blasting on their boombox. In fact, I got yelled at by getting on the tube with some Bob Marley playing at the Victoria Station. Some little lady told me to turn my music off because it was inherently political. This music was inherently political. I'm going to come back to that. So this album is recorded somewhat in Kingston, somewhat in London while he's on his exodus. It's got the I3s, his backup singers, including Judy Mowat and Rita Marley, his wife. The incredible guitarist Junior Marvin is now part of the Wailers, which got that. But Carlton Barrett, the drummer that basically, he doesn't invent the reggae beat, but he kind of is the guy who really creates the one drop reggae beat that is just so associated with that music forever. Like any band, any heavy metal band could be doing, a reggae number, and they'd be doing a Carlton Barrett beat when they play. And the album, when it comes out, again, there's this large audience, this large global audience. It's kind of divided between the people who want more reggae and the people who are expecting something a little bit different. And it initially wasn't seen as like a traditional reggae record. It was a little bit more of an R&B record, a soul record. But it was also divided in the sides. The first side is sort of the politics side. The second side is the love and hope side. And the first side, besides including the title theme, Exodus, Movement of Jah People, where literally he calls out for a new Moses to lead us to the promised land. I mean, it is just saying that this diaspora is around the world, and at some point we need to come home to our promised land, is the great song, So Much Things to Say. So Much Things to Say name checks Marcus Garvey, the sort of creator or the leader of the original Back to Africa movement, and Paul Bogle, who was a Baptist pastor in the 1800s in Jamaica, who led sort of a rebellion of independence and was hung by the British. And it's just sort of inherently this is where we are black people around the world. And here's where we're going. This is a very forward movement. I mean, just the chugga, chugga, chugga of the Exodus song is just really picks you up and carries you away. The second side is chock full of like cute, what are cute love songs on the surface? You know, Three Little Birds, I Don't Want to Wait in Vain for Your Love, Jammin', Jammin', Jammin' in the Name of the Lord. Like that was a huge hit. And of course the One Love song, which, you know, these songs became, you know, commercial jingles. They became used to sell detergent. It became used to like bring people to Jamaica on Virgin Airlines. I mean, they became sort of so commodified that they were really stripped from the notion of people who are denied the simple pleasures of life, including love and sex. And underneath these cute little songs is all this pain and tension of people who aren't allowed to live normal lives because of colonialization and racism and violence and things like that. So there's sort of a deeper meaning under these songs that are just these, don't worry about a thing. Right? There's this whole, why aren't you worrying? You're worrying because there's gangs in the street. You're worrying because there's oppression around the world. You were worried because colonial empires try to maintain the stranglehold on people of color. Right? There is this deeper meaning of those nice little jingles of those songs. So this record is a real turning point. Again, 1977 seems like everything is changing. That really brings awareness to this global struggle that wasn't solved in the civil rights movement. It wasn't solved, you know, by democratic processes. There's still a stranglehold on people of color around the world. So this sort of theme continues. Kaya, his next album, had similar themes, and you know, it follows Bob right up to his death. Redemption Song being one of the last songs he records. This album has also sort of another element that we need to talk about. So the story of Bob is on screen, right? There are people who are going to see this movie, and I'm really happy to hear that this movie features a lot more of the role that Rita played in Bob Marley's success and his career. I'm glad that we're centering the women behind the story, and she was also on stage, so she wasn't that behind the story, and she's still out there going strong. And Junior Marvin, the guitarist, is still out there going strong. I mean, some of these people in the story are still going strong. There's a great documentary on Netflix called Who Shot the Sheriff that covers the sort of the assassination and Bob Marley leaving Jamaica and then coming back for the big One Love concert, which was hugely important to creating unity in Jamaica and at least simmering down some of the violence that was happening. But there's this other thing about Bob Marley that's very interesting, and a lot of people are talking about it, is like Bob Marley as a pose. Like, if you want to be cool, you got to have a Bob Marley record. You got to have a Bob Marley t-shirt. If you're, you know, in your dorm room, if you have a poster on the wall, that means you're cool because you have a Bob Marley. You don't know anything about the story. You don't know anything about Rastafarianism that sees white society as Babylon and a struggle against Babylon, white society, including, you know, the white kid in the dorm room. It's just sort of this thing that's separated from the thing that created it. In sociology, we call that value stretch. It's stretched away from the values that created it. That there is this lack of connection about what this music really means. And you can imagine, I went to, the first time I went to Jamaica was in 1986. And I went as a huge reggae fan. I mean, part of my goal when I went to Kingston was to buy as many records as I could. You know, I just wanted to come back. Everybody else was like, bring back weed. And I was like, no, man, I'm bringing back vinyl. And I brought stacks and stacks of dub records and Toots and the Maytals records and everything I could get my hands on in Jamaica. And it was the second time I'd been to the Caribbean. But it was, even by 1986, there was a commodification of Bob Marley. My girlfriend at the time, we decided to go sort of slum over at the Holiday Inn to get some food to eat. And there was a reggae band playing, and it was explaining to these sort of retired white Americans who Bob Marley was in very simplistic terms, and not talking about the overthrow of Babylon. And until the day when there are no longer first class and second class citizens, there will be war. There's not, all that had been already stripped away. And there was, you know, that is something that is still sort of an issue around Bob Marley. Like, you have to think there are people in Jamaica who see all the posters on the walls and the T-shirts and think, you don't get it. You don't get what the significance of this person is. It's not a singer of jingles for laundry detergent. This is a man who supported revolution through love. Nonviolent revolution, but supported revolution and taking up an uprising against the oppressor. So it's incumbent upon us, especially us white people, us people who are not people of color, when we are consuming this music. Yeah, the melodies are amazing. I mean, the melodies, Three Little Birds is, one of the greatest pop songs ever written. This song about love, these songs about, turn the lights down low, you know what that song's about. These songs about kind of, finding your way in life are also coming from a place of incredible pain because of colonialism, because of white supremacy, because of oppression, because of capitalism, all these things that have been utilized to put people in human bondage, subhuman bondage, as Marley calls it. So I think there's certainly a complete permission to enjoy this great music. Just let it wash over you. I mean, I spent 3 summers in the Caribbean on Isla Mujeres, teaching a class, an anthropology class. It's one of my favorite places. Andy and I would go every summer, and the Bob Marley would play, and everybody would get up and dance because it's so iconic. And you'd see white kids in dreadlocks and dancing to the Bob Marley music that the DJ was playing, and you wonder, are they dancing to it because it's a thing, or because they want to be a part of the struggle? They want to tap into this movement across the globe that continues to this day to free nations from their colonial powers and be free themselves. I mean, in America, we love freedom, right? We want to be freedom. We fought a war against our colonial oppressor. Hello, England, we love you. Why can't other people do that? So I want to share this record with you. It is a monumental record in the history of music. Again, Time magazine calls it the greatest album of the 20th century. But there's also a deeper meaning when we listen to this music that I think people of color understand, especially from people who are African rooted or Caribbean rooted or even Latin American rooted, to understand the struggle here. I mean, around the world, you would see fighters in Angola with Bob Marley t-shirts, right? That's not just because the song is a cute little love song. That's a song because it's inspiring them to fight on against the power, fight the power. So there we are, Haile Selassie. That we could, but we can also sort of appreciate the meaning of this record on a sociological level, not just a beautiful musical level. All right, I wanted to spend a little bit of time with Bob Marley. See the movie or don't see the movie. Put up the poster in your dorm room or don't put up the poster in the dorm room. Just know Jah Love will protect us and the struggle continues. All right, next time, speaking of colonialism, next time we're going to talk about hip-hop. We got a great hip-hop record that is incredibly controversial and brilliant at the same time. We're going to talk about Paul's Boutique by the Beastie Boys. Let's get some Beastie Boys up in here. But in the meantime, in the moment, Exodus, this album, for the world, for so many people struggling around the world, for so many people who are oppressed, whether it's in the Middle East or in Africa or in the Caribbean or Latin America or the United States of America, this record matters. This record matters. This music matters. You matter. So let's talk about it.